Welcome to Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. Decoding the beliefs and strategies of global experts to give you an updated mindset to make the most of modern life. Hosted by the UK's most in-demand and highest-paid hypnotherapist, Adam Cox.
This is Modern Mindset, the show where we discuss the psychology and emotion of finance and business. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today is Matt Kendall, who is an IEMT trainer and public speaker. Welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Very well indeed, very well. Thanks for joining us. And first of all, I guess the key question is, IEMT, what is that?
Well, IEMT is very similar to EMDR, which people probably don't know either of. IEMT is an eye movement therapy. It stands for Integral Eye Movement Therapy or Technique. It's essentially, it's a tool and it's also a way of working, and it helps people to be brought out of negative experiences from their past. It helps people to update their identity. So essentially it helps people to, it works brilliantly on things like anxiety. It does not work on emotion, but the whole basis of IEMT is that it does not work on emotion. It works on the memory that is causing the emotion. So say if somebody feels guilty all the time or unhappy or anxious, anxiety is not an emotion, actually, that's an overstimulation of the nervous system. It tends to come from guilt or panic or anger. So say somebody's got a temper. You find out how strong that feeling is, then you regress it to when they felt the first time they remember feeling that way, and then you then apply the eye movements on that sensitizing memory, and then you're trying to recalibrate what the problem is. You're trying to reconstruct the problem, and every time you're trying to reconstruct it, you'll find it's changed a bit. So then we'll take the feeling what's new now and we'll take it back to when the first started that way. Essentially, it's like deconstructing a cocktail of emotion. So you're going back. So each problem that you face will tend to have like about 3 or 4 sensitizing events that we take the client back to, and you can begin to process, and then there's no outcome to it. It's an exploration of the problem, and you tend to get one of 2 changes. Either a change in the submodality, so imagine the first memory, or when you access a memory, it's like subjective, so it's like you're there. It's 9 out of 10 in strength, it's clear, it's in focus, and it's a movie. That's likely to become objective, which means you're seeing it from a different perspective. It'll feel further away in space and in time, because what happens, you get age progression. It'll be less colourful. You might not be able to get it at all. It'll drop in significance. And the other thing that can also happen is a change of meaning. So, because what happens is that, say that something happened to you when you were 7 years old. When you're accessing that memory, you're regressing to that age as you're accessing it. What IEMT allows you to do, it allows you to go back and view that memory as you are today. And when you view it from as you are today, it changes it. So a good example is that one of my favourite films growing up was Terminator 2. Now, Terminator 2, I used to watch when I was like 14, 15, and the effects were amazing. The story was absolutely great. I actually watched it a couple of months ago, and I was like, what's this? It looked cheap and tacky. But the thing is, when I thought about Terminator 2, I don't think about it as a 37-year-old watching. I think about it as a 15-year-old watching it. So when I watched it now, it looked completely different and it meant something very different to me. That has not changed, but I have. So when I access it now, and I watched it now, it meant something completely different. And so that's what IEMT is really based on. It's basically about going back to these sensitizing memories and processing them so the change can occur. And essentially what this means is that in your present day, your decisions are now based on the information in front of you, not because of the emotional connection to things. And also, you learn a lot about yourself because you probably don't know what these sensitizing memories are. So going back to these things, you actually learn an awful lot about yourself as well.
Things have changed in between. And it does sound remarkably similar to EMDR, which, you know, for those people that aren't familiar with that, has applications in things like PTSD and things like that. Because quite often people will relive the very moment that caused the trauma, so completely associated, and it gives them the ability to actually move on from that key event.
It really does. A couple of the differences are, because we do get quite this question a lot. One of the main differences between EMDR and IEMT is that IEMT doesn't just work on memory, it works on the emotion, and you regress the kinesthetic response to take it back to how you learned how to feel this way. And then you work on that memory. With EMDR, you know what you're working on straight away. Plus, from what I believe, with EMDR, you construct a picture to represent that thing. With IEMT, you actually work on what the memory is. So if it's a movie, it's a movie. If it's a series of pictures, it's a series of pictures. Plus, there's no belief system work in IEMT. With EMDR, you think about the belief you want or what the belief is. I'm not quite sure. With IEMT, it's what's the problem. Hold the problem. It's got nothing to do with positivity or trying to change something or trying to change something from a negative to a positive belief. It just works on the negative.
And I guess, because using phrases like submodalities, having an idea of NLP and the differences to pay attention in terms of internal representations probably helps if you're working with people to notice what's changed in terms of how they're perceiving that thought, that memory.
It's IEMT is very much about recalibrating. So, because the thing is, people don't know how to measure their experience, but with IEMT, it's very precise. If something is a movie, feels a strength of 9 out of 10, is subjective, and it's clear, well, if it changes to being 5 out of 10, it's objective. It was a movie and now it's a pitch. You can actually be very precise on how that's changed, and you're teaching the clients of how to, because the thing is, they might say it's still there, but it's massively different.
One of the things that I find quite fascinating with you is that you're in the industry of personal development and speaking, and yet you almost come across like anti-personal development. A lot of the conventional, let's say, cliches of positivity and motivation, you're almost the opposite. And I'm just curious, in terms of, because clearly you're passionate about helping people and you want to see people make a difference, but there seems to be a very different perspective than most people in the industry. Where do you think that came from, and what's behind it?
It comes from a few things. I've been in the self-development industry for a long time, and unfortunately I've seen behind the curtain of how it works. I've had associates who have been salespeople for some of these large industrial size conferences, and I know the damage it causes people. A lot of people who seek personal change should be seeing therapists, not motivational speakers. Walking over hot coals in a car park in an airport being cheered on by a group of people does not help your psychosis. It makes things worse. And what happens is, I do not like sensationalization of therapy. Because if you pump somebody up full of great emotions and motivation, they still can't do the thing. What I think was the saying is, what mindset without skill set makes for a happy idiot. So if you so if you pump somebody up full of them getting really passionate, I could be really passionate about flying a helicopter. I'm going to die because I don't know how to fly a helicopter.
There's a lack of emphasis on getting good, getting competent.
This is the thing. So people say, people go, look, it's okay for you, you're really confident on stage. I've been speaking on stage since I was 15. I'm 37, I've been doing it for 20. And the reason why I do it, because I'm good, because I'm very careful and precise, and I spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that I'm good. It's not big, and they go, well, is it like, do you say affirmations to yourself beforehand? No, because that's stupid. No. And so the thing is, people want the result of all the practice without doing the practice. And do you know what? That's really easy to sell to people who are a little bit, I don't like the term gullible, but it goes along those kind of lines. You know what I mean? A lot of it's snake oil, especially some of these property things. If you go to a free event that's property based, you are in trouble.
Well, you're going to get pitched at the end.
The thing is, it's not just being pitched, it's being bullied into by buying something.
And a lot of these people, they know about psychological manipulation.
Of course they do.
And they're using it to extract as much money from the participants as they can.
And do you know what? I think it's like 99% of all these things are bought on credit cards, not debit cards.
Interesting.
Because they don't have the money. I've been to a lot of these things, and I've got a lot of friends who've been to them, and they report back. They actually have scripts to call relatives so you can borrow money off them on the day. They have scripts for you to call your bank to get extended credit on your credit cards. And the thing is, with these mentoring schemes, it's 25 grand. You never quite get to where you need to be. There's always another level. You just don't.
It always levels up. And for people listening, not really sure how to kind of relate this to something that's been in let's say mainstream media. Trump University followed the same model of having seminar of lots of people that aspire to be wealthy. And then it's essentially selling information that is widely available for free, but it's the sales techniques that get people buying into this kind of greed or kind of enthusiasm to be rich and end up very poor, which is why Trump got sued, I think, for Trump University.
Yeah. Well, if you take the classic example, I don't know if I can... Well, I'm not saying anything that's not obvious. There's a guy I particularly hate, and if somebody's doing a video in front of a bookshelf, of books, if you're impressed by somebody who can read, you need to get different role models. So he's always standing in front of these books, and what his key demographic, a guy's age about 22 to 35, 36, something like that, who want women, they want fast cars, they want loads of money. Although he's constantly saying it's about health, it's about happiness, and it's got nothing to do with these people. And he's got supermodels around him, and he's in jacuzzis, in private jets, but he's always going, it's really what you do is integrity. It's just like, it's ridiculous. It's like McDonald's selling salads. We know what your game is. You don't. Do you know what? With McDonald's and people who sell salads, the more salads that they have on the menu, the more burgers they sell. People go in thinking, I'll buy a salad. You get a Big Mac. So again, they are. There's all to become all these social media managers. It's taking people who are not that well educated a lot of the time and promising them the world. They just need to do a mentoring scheme. And do you know what? This is the good thing, right? When they fail, and they will, they celebrate failure.
How do they celebrate failure?
Because failure is celebrated in the self-development industry. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. It's cost you 25 grand to work this out. But so when you do fail, they celebrate your failure.
And also it makes them immune. System. It makes them immune from any kind of recourse as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of, and I think there is a lot of that going around that, I, for one, am a big fan of competency and congruency, actually walking the talk. And it makes me laugh sometimes when I see life coaches giving advice to people about how to be rich and successful. And they're living in a one-bedroom flat that they're renting, and they've got no assets, and they've got nothing.
Of course.
Why do you think there's such a level of pretense of people pretending to be something they're not? Is it just for financial gain, or is it because they're almost living an affirmation that because they want to be that person so much, they think by helping other people become that, somehow it's going to rub off on themselves?
During the gold rush, there were people who went to go find the gold, and there was people who were selling the shovels. So this is what the self-development industry is like. If you want to get good at something, pick what that actual thing is and go and find the people who are doing that thing. Don't just go to people who sell motivation or mindsets, because mindset, to me, I think is the biggest con in the world. Just saying you have a poor mindset or something. No, you're not good at something, and there's a difference. And so people think if they just speak from their heart, or if they're authentic, whatever that means, then other people will follow them. And the thing is, you will get fans. If you believe in somebody, and if you pump people up and sell them things, you will get fans. And so there's that whole sort of megalomania, aspect about it. And I've never really been into that. Now I have a lot of people who don't like me, to be perfectly honest, which is what I'm fine with. But I do think there's a lot of sort of megalomania and delusions of grandeur. And a lot of it's just rehashed nonsense that was in, Awaken the Giant within like 20, 30 years ago. It's just, I hear the same stories about, when Banner broke the 4-minute mile and everyone else broke it. Oprah Winfrey was abused as a child. And now it's all this kind of nonsense talking about leaders and, the colonel from KFC banged on 500 doors. So what they're doing is but these people who are successful like this are the lottery winners of life. They are not looking at the 99.9% of people who fail. So they're selling a dream. They're selling the winning lottery ticket. But unfortunately, most people will never achieve their dreams. They will never be happy, and they will die, and the amount of people who come to their funeral will mainly be dictated by the weather. But that doesn't really fill a room at an airport hotel full of people wanting to, you know what I mean? So,
I do, but I would say that there is an element that comes before competency, and that is, in my mind, psychological. To what it takes to get good at something are resourceful states. Now, you might not call that resource motivation, you might call it determination, you might have it clarity that you want to become good at something. But the reality is, if you don't believe that you can ever be good, and many people went to school where teachers told them they were stupid and things like that, then the reality is how they feel about themselves is going to shut down their ability to even desire to become competent. And how do they break out of that kind of rut?
Okay. Well, there's two things there, and I had the same thing with my business studies teacher. He said I wasn't allowed to do the A-level business studies because I was in his GCSE group. He was also head of sixth form, and he didn't want me to do business studies because he didn't want me to lower the grade average of the class. He said I lacked business acumen and organisational skills. So I ran one of the largest, or I still do, one of the largest meetup groups in the world, 25,000 members. I've done 450 events. I also have been self-employed for 15 years. So I got that, and sometimes when I'm doing something well, I do think of him and think. But there is a couple of things you can do. If there's something wrong, if you have belief issues, you can work on them, and IEMT is a beautiful way of doing this. What you don't want to do is pump yourself full of motivation and emotion. And all this wanting to be great, if you have a need to be great, is born out of insecurity. So if you're like, I'm pumping yourself up, lying to yourself in the mirror, I'm a great person, right? Well, why are you saying that? A great person wouldn't say that. They just look in the mirror and smile. They wouldn't have to lie to themselves. So by using IEMT, you can actually work on the negative things that are there, process that, and so it just returns it back to like zero in a way. Then you can go and learn the skill set. And I think I am from the north of England, and we don't have these kind of things. It's just get on with it. No one cares. Just get on with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have this. We need to be really motivated in order to do something. Let me share some wisdom with you here. You cannot be motivated about something you're not doing. And people want to be really motivated, and they think by psyching themselves up. So imagine you're starting a business. Well, imagine it in 5 years' time. How many employees will you have? How many cars do you have? Do you have offices in San Francisco? What happens is you're creating a dream, right? Now, when you start to then take any footsteps towards that and it doesn't work like you want to, you shut it down. And the reason is you do not want to destroy the dream. So therefore, it remains a dream. So everything which I do is like, just get on with it. If there's a problem, use IEMT or your whatever change work tool to work on the negative, and then just do the next step and do the next step.
If all these people, gurus, you could call them, or kind of self-described leaders of change and all this kind of stuff, are so ineffective, why do you think they are drawing so much attention and interest from people? And someone like Tony Robbins, for example, I would say has had a positive impact on how I think on certain things. But equally, I've been in rooms with thousands of people, and I think it's almost like they're inflating a balloon. They're going to leave, and they're going to go back to exactly what they were doing before. Why do you think there is so much desire to follow people like that if they aren't able to actually create what they're selling, which is that people can have the future that they want?
Well, people don't usually follow up on whatever they're doing anyway. But it makes you feel like you are doing something. Although you're not, it makes you feel like you are. I think one of the main reasons is a lack of organised religion, or the breakdown of organised religion. Look at Tony Robbins, his "I am not your guru." Just look at he has a Christ-like pose on the actual DVD, on the actual DVD on Netflix, whatever it is. People are always seeking salvation, and that's what people are selling. Type in abundance. See, it's that classic stance of looking up to the heavens and money floating. Just type in abundance to Google, you see it, right? So I think a lot of it's to do with, it goes kind of quite deep, but yeah, I think a lot of it's to do with people don't necessarily have a God anymore, and they need somebody to look up to. They need somebody to believe in them by saying everything's going to be okay. Because at the end of the day, you're going to die, and we need to have some sort of reassurance in some way. So I definitely think lack of a religion in people's lives. So we're filling it with people like, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, and whoever, all these other sorts of people who really believe in you. And look at the language. It's not far off like Southern Baptists. If you look at how they get people up and how they really raise people's spirits, and they feel great, and then when they feel great, they sell them stuff.
It certainly looks like the kind of evangelical preaching money-making machine that brings a smile to people's face if they were to go on holiday in the States and see that kind of stuff, or kind of see it on YouTube. And yet, you're right, there is an element of personal development, let's say gurus, being almost the preachers to the secular, And
do you know what? If I was in that room as well, watching Tony Robbins or something like that, I would feel that way. I might even buy. Because I'm human, and they're playing on psychological triggers. Everything is absolutely planned out to an absolute T of how many people, and getting people to run to the back of the room. And it's a very, it's not an outdated model, but I know there are certain companies that will use plants in the audience because nobody wants to be first. So they go, "Are you coming? This sounds brilliant." They're there at every one. I know because I used to know one. So they're there, they're encouraging people to actually do it. And then if people say, "I can't afford this 10 grand," well, that's because you have a scarcity mindset. Or a poverty mindset. And what you need is to have an abundance mindset, and you do that by getting extended credit on your credit card and signing up for this mentoring scheme.
If motivation in the in the way that you describe it is a myth, how can people get themselves making progress in the areas of their lives, not because they need some kind of change work or therapy, but just how do they set goals and make progress if motivation doesn't work?
The first thing you have to ask yourself is why. Why do you want to achieve a certain thing? Why do you need a big house? Why do you actually need this? And it's usually not for survival, not for comfort, not for warmth. It's usually to do with the ego. So it's like, why do you need to have that new Mercedes? Because it'll make me feel good, okay? Now, when I work with somebody for like this, for example, why do you need to feel good? What does that allow you to believe, and what does that allow you to avoid believing or feeling? Because if you find out what that allows them to avoid feeling, working on that problem, you're going to actually have a lot more help with people. So it allows me to feel like I'm not a loser. How familiar is that feeling of being a loser? And going back to how they learned how to feel, because my dad left when I was 7, so work on that. Do you need a new car? It's not really as important now. Because what people are doing with these material acquisitions of houses, cars, and partners sometimes, is to cover up feelings, is to cover up, they're wanting to make themselves feel good. Because if I've got a new car with a hot, young model in there, and I've got all this fame, I'm going to feel, well, it's not. And, this causes a lot of problems, because we all know celebrities who achieve fame and it doesn't work out too well, and it happens all the time. And I think that some celebrities, I think if people achieve celebrity later in their life, like Ricky Gervais, for example, is a good example. He'd already had a good life anyway, and then he achieved celebrity, and he really enjoys that now. There's nothing wrong with money, and if you enjoy the money, it's absolutely fine. It's much more to do with why do you want or need it, because people are desperate to be famous. People are desperate for meaning. Just look at, I think is X Factor on the moment, or not strictly, but X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or whatever year after year after year, huge aircraft hangar places of people coming and singing, because they're trying to achieve this, trying to achieve something. But the fact is that that's all very transient. It's all material that can be taken away. And people go, it's all about self-love and all this kind of thing, which I don't really sort of go on about. It's more like, why do you need this? What does it allow you to avoid feeling? Work on that. But unfortunately, that's not as sexy as telling people, well, you do deserve the universe is going to give you a car. Are you absolutely mental? You really have to be beyond stupid to think, like, I mean, genuinely stupid if you think the universe is going to give you a car. The one that really annoys me, I'll stop ranting and say it, is when, well, I was watching The Secret the other week. I made myself do it. I was feeling quite sadistic. And this woman needed some money. So she started asking the universe for money. And then there was a check that came through the door, right? Where did this check come from? Who signed for it? Or what's it for? You don't just get sent check. Was it check for £50,000 signed the universe? And the problem is, if your life is really bad, having this kind of thing to believe in, that the universe has got your back, is very seductive. But unfortunately, people who run these events know who to go for.
Yeah,
they're not going after doctors and professors, are they?
No, there's a lot of vulnerable people out there that can be exploited based on genuine problems that need solving. Some really interesting insight there. If someone wants to get more information on the way in which you create change and get through these blocks, where can they do that? Where can they find out more information?
Well, I do a lot of talks for a company called Funzing. I also run something called Interesting Talks London, which is a speaking event. You can just Google Interesting Talks, you'll find me. You go on Meetup Interesting Talks London. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Mr. Matt Kendall, Kendall. And you can find me on YouTube. Basically, I'm on all the platforms. I'm very easy to find. But my talk, which I specialise in, is called Removing Negative Memories. And I'm going to be speaking in Sheffield, Bristol, Brighton, possibly some other places. But I train therapists. If you're a coach or therapist and you want to learn a really interesting skill set, please do check that out. But also just check out IEMT in general. I did a really interesting interview with the creator called Andrew Austin, and that's on YouTube as well. So IEMT, you just Google that, I will come. If you put in remove negative memories, I come up first in Google for that as well.
Perfect. Matt, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset in association with Share Radio. Join me again next week for more.
Thank you for listening to Modern Mindset with Adam Cox. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review. Modern Mindset, picking the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours.